Hi everyone. Welcome to Onstage with Dorian, where we meet people who bring you live performance in Vermont and New Hampshire. Actors, singers, dancers, puppeteers, directors, designers, and more. I'm Dorian Chanois. Let's get started. My guest today is David Stern, best known in Southern Vermont and southwestern New Hampshire as artistic director of Wild Goose Players, a company of which he is also the founder. The title of today's episode, Theater Polymath, is an indication of the many, many hats that David wears with great stylishness, and we're going to hear about that today too. So, welcome David Stern.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
A pleasure. Okay, so can you tell us about Wild Goose Players? Like, how did it start? What is it?
It was somewhat born out of COVID. It is a community theater company. I was the artistic director at Main Street Arts in Saxons River. And we were building what I think of as a theatrical force, a company that kept expanding, and we were doing more and more work around the area. And then COVID came, and for very good financial reasons, thoughtful reasons, MSA took a holiday. And as that holiday went on, I really felt like I wanted to get back to doing work. And they were not yet ready to get back to doing work at that time. And so I just thought, I'm going to get started. And the community of performers and designers and technicians that I had worked with were ready to go. So we just started, got a storefront, opened it up, and started making theater.
What is the origin of the name Wild Goose Players?
That's a good one. We made a lot of lists. Sandy Klein, who has done a lot of work in New England Youth Theater and worked with us for quite a long time, she was at that time really partnering with me in the creation of this company. And we bandied names about, and for some reason Wild Goose kept staying in the mix. And there was something we loved about the kind of futility of the chase, the wild goose chase, that we knew we were starting a theater company mid-COVID in Bellows Falls, which is not a megalopolis designed to support a theater company. And
but as you're proving, it's a great arts center.
It is. We also loved the way leadership is rotated within a goose flock. We also loved there were a few things about leadership, but we also loved Mary Oliver's poem about wild geese, which is this beautiful, and I won't, if I could quote the whole thing perfectly, I would do it, but I can't. But it's on our website. It's actually, so all of those things kind of came together, and my wife loves that they're monogamous too. So anyway, it all came together. It feels right somehow.
Good. You are not a native Vermonter, is that correct?
I'm not. I was raised in Connecticut.
Okay, so tell us how you came to Vermont and to be a Vermonter.
I went to UVM. So at UVM, I met my wife, who is a lifetime Vermonter. And although we moved around, we thought we were going to come back to Burlington for a long time. But we really wanted to come back to Vermont. We loved it politically. We loved it in terms of the beauty of the natural environment. And we just really felt community, and the people here spoke to us. So we ended up finding our way.
Okay, what happened for you as a theater artist between college and being an artistic director?
I got a graduate degree in design for the theater. I have always loved direction, but I wanted to make sure that I could work around home and be with my family and not have to run around the world to make a living. So I did. When I got out of graduate school, I ended up For a time, I designed at the Boston Conservatory, and then I ended up designing for the New England Aquarium. For a number of years, I was the senior exhibit designer at the aquarium. So I used to say that the fish have a lot less ego than the people actors I knew. They never complained, they just swim around. But it was a really interesting challenge, and I loved that, but then I got a chance to run a theater department. So I moved to, I had taught theater at Swarthmore College a little bit, but I took on leading the department at the Middlesex School, which is a secondary school in Concord. And from there, I became a passionate educator, and that is really what moved me around for the next 20 some odd years. I still worked in the theater. I taught theater, but I also founded a company when I was in Concord and did some professional work there. And I worked at a little bit at the McCarter down in Princeton, and at Merrimack Repertory Theater in Lowell, and the West End a little bit. And so I tried to keep my hand in professionally. And I always, starting in college, wanted to have a company where we would stay together and know each other and support each other and do that thing, the dreaming part of theater.
So what happened to the teaching in the school in New Hampshire?
I taught for 23 years. I changed schools around every 7 years because I really was looking for different educational paradigms. So for me, I struggled with grading. I found parts of education coercive. I got fixated on curricular freedom and certain ideas, Alfie Kohn and John Holt and Dewey and philosophers. And so I went from an elite boarding school to an ungraded Quaker alternative farm school to a public school, and then we went to teach in Morocco for a year. And then I came back and taught at Kimball Union in New Hampshire. All of them taught me a lot about teaching, and now I'm at a point in my career where I only want to teach people who want to know.
I think I know a lot of professors who wish they thought that way too, or secretly teach that way. Let's talk a little bit about your work as a designer. And you generously provided some images of your work, and we'll look at them one by one, and maybe you'll tell us, not maybe, would you tell us what the show is, how you designed it, and what features, I'm going to ask it this way, what features you hoped everybody would just immediately notice, and what features only another designer or an aficionado would notice?
Okay, we'll try. So that's a slide from Jesus Christ Superstar. What you can't tell is that the set is very tall. You're looking at the bottom third or quarter of some enormous stone flats. My goal with Superstar was really a mythic tale, that this thing just had a colossal gravitas and weight spatially to it. So I wanted the mob, which is actually created with all these masked figures, really became a mob because the faceless mob sort of idea. And they glommed together. And Pilate, who you can barely see, was on stilts. You might be able to see him better in another slide.
Yeah.
But again, it was really about mythic intensity. There is also what you can't see. Upstage center, there's a giant cross in the rock that descends at the end of the show and becomes a bridge, a walkway, a kind of. It's very, very theatrical and creates this huge negative space cross.
So you said stone walls, but they're not really stone, are they?
No, they are foam, but they are a pretty good stone look. Mm-hmm. When you get up close, we actually burned them a little bit. We took a torch, took the stone and laid it out outside, and then very lightly touched it with a torch. And so it becomes very organic in a specific way.
I think we have one other image from that show, and maybe we'll see. Okay. Now, I'm going to start by saying that when I looked at this, I did see that a number of the performers had extra heads that they were holding. So that's a way of making it look like a bigger crowd. Is that right?
It was part of the mob, yeah, this idea of the mob. And it could be it meant that we could control sort of head movements and the way the whole ensemble really could move in a very strong, united fashion, which as a mob can be really, and a little bit, you were asking before we started about choreographic and directorial interplay, and even here, the way they moved, and this is something that Sandy Klein costumed, the co-founder, she costumed this with me. Those are just all shredded. The amount of work that went into generating all the shreds and gluing and sewing them onto each piece. But when they moved, it was just beautiful.
Great. Okay, let's see the next one, please. What is this?
So this is Sweeney Todd. And this is, I can't tell, it may be the opening of the show, or it might be right near the end. But that center unit, the one with the big smokestack and then what is a giant playground slide that was meant to mimic giant plumbing. It was painted sort of in a verdigris, rotting iron sort of look. That whole unit spins. And the two step units that have arches in them, both stage left and stage right, those roll and they meet the spinning unit in the center in a whole variety of different configurations. And so the piece became very, very flexible. And then even for things like Fogg's Asylum, the whole spinning unit, we actually did the scene while the thing was revolving.
Tell us what Fogg's Asylum is.
They take Joanna, the young female, one of the protagonists, and they lock her away in a mental institution. And there's an attempt. Anthony attempts to rescue her and find her, but then all of the inmates are set free when they break out, and there's kind of a wild rampage through the streets, which we created a lot of that tempestual movement. So
the feeling I'm getting is that the things that are important to you are versatility, flexibility, and a certain amount of, I'm just going to say it this way, creative fakery. That does look like stone, but you've told us what it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, I think, creative fakery is always part of scenic design.
Okay.
I also am... I think the actor is the heart of everything. So for me, I'm trying to figure out what they can use. What can they climb on? What can we... And so if they can push the set, if the actual movement... My favorite set change, so there are set changes that take almost no time, and I love that. But if the set change can be action, that's my favorite.
Okay, great. Let's see the next picture, which is, I think, from Into the Woods. Yes. Tell us what this is, what the moment is in the musical, and how you created this.
So this is a scene that in every other, I've actually directed Into the Woods. It may be the show I've done more than any other show. I think I've done it 4 times. This is a scene that I've never included before. It is a scene with Rapunzel and the witch. I'm trying to remember what the name of the song is, but the witches, they're both singing about their relationship. And it doesn't move the plot forward at all. It's really just color for their relationship. So I had cut it because it's a long show, but these 2 women have exceptionally lovely voices. And I thought, okay, let's see what we can do with it. Scenically, that is the show is, I mean, it's a magical space, a fairy tale place, but also needs to be able to be dark. I love stained glass as an idea, so there's a huge stained glass-esque backdrop there. I liked it because it's rear lit with color, and I can make that by lighting it in red, for example, the bleakest, darkest, sinister feeling thing without changing a thing.
So you said it's backlit?
It is backlit.
Can you explain what that is and how it works?
So there's a drop behind that drop.
What's a drop?
So a backdrop is a full stage covering, typically fabric. In this case, it's actually made out of cut gel. So thousands of dollars of lighting gel laid on top of a webbing of what's called opera net, but 1 by 1 inch netting. And then we hot melt glued it in bits and pieces till it all came together as a stained glass, and then used fabric and glue leading, and then dragged the whole thing up in the air. Behind that is another drop, so if here's that drop, upstage of that is another drop, and we shine light onto that drop, sometimes called a bounce drop, and then the light is projected out through the stained glass, like light would come in through a stained glass in a window.
Sounds fantastic. I wish I had seen it. Okay, let's have one more. This is Chicago.
Chicago.
Now, tell us about this. You designed this too?
Yep, this is a much more, you can see it's very architectural, very symmetrical, designed as a show space because the part of the whole construct of Chicago is life is a show. It's all about who's the best entertainer, which is ironic when we think about our current political situation. So I put the band is actually up where those two gentle curving light chase lit light bands are. Sitting atop that is the pit, and you can't see there's sort of a giant deco fan over them. This is Billy Flynn's big entrance, and there are dancers, really old-style burlesque dancers that bring him on. We want Billy. So it's very sexy and designed to be very evocative, and the feathers and all that. The costumes for that show were stunning, and those the dancers and their headdresses and the beads, it was really lovely.
Did you design the costumes too?
I did not. Those were designed by Liz Guzinski, who is another local artist who has done a bunch of work. She painted on Jesus Christ Superstar. She did costumes for Into the Woods. Among other things, she's very talented.
But the costume designer and the set designer have to work together very closely, yes?
Yes, hopefully we do.
And did you also design the lights for these productions?
Yeah, I do the lighting mostly.
Can you talk a little bit about how lighting works with costumes and scenery?
I can. I will say that lighting is so ephemeral to me. I have learned how I like to use it, and I can say a lot of things that sound like I understand it, and I have a master's in it. So I should understand it, but color mixing with light, which is for me the most fascinating, exciting, challenging part of lighting, you can take deep red light and deep green light and deep blue light and put them together and have white light. And that's an amazing, it's the opposite of color,
right.
of pigment.
Pigment, yep.
And so I find that really exciting on stage, and I do love to play with that, and certainly it has huge effects on any colored object on the stage. So I can deaden that color, enliven that color, keep things in a realistic or unrealistic palette all through light, and you can also focus the eye so beautifully.
This is why you don't want to piss off the lighting designer, because a costume that was very flattering to you can become very unflattering to you under the wrong light.
Yeah, it's great to have a friend in lighting, but I've never seen a vindictive lighting designer, but I'm sure they exist.
Okay, one more image, please, and this will be You're in Town. Now, you directed this show, And I'm particularly interested in this image because clearly these people are dancing. This was choreographed. So can you talk a little bit about how directors and choreographers, let's just say, combine forces or dance together to make a seamless production in which there were really two very different experts making the stage look the way it does and the actors look the way they do?
Yeah, and sometimes that's hard because I think it's my job to come in with some level of vision. And it's also, I love to also get their fresh vision. And sometimes those visions are really just synced up from the get-go, and sometimes not. And then there's a lovely listening time or experimenting time. This was a show that I just found the choreography seemed to emerge easily and work really well. This piece was really incredibly fun, lively, intense. Again, lighting-wise, complementary color scheme of orange, red, and green really pops them and makes it kind of underworldly. This is supposed to be taking place under the streets and the sewers. Lately it's been I'm sort of colored by a recent experience on Fiddler when really the choreographer and I started off, I felt like we weren't seeing the same thing and really wrestled together to find really some lovely common ground and get that together. I think it's communication.
So in the context of a rehearsal, in an old-fashioned, very old-fashioned musical, you might say, okay, the scene goes on, and now we hear some music, and there's going to be some dancing. So let's stop the rehearsal here. Choreographer, you come in, and you're going to have 45 minutes to concoct a dance. But some of the more recent shows don't work that way. They're much more, I'll say, integrated.
Or sung through, or... and I think, I love dance and I love movement and the power of movement, and so I certainly want, and I'm not a mover, so I am at the mercy of, people who can communicate movement. And I care a lot about what direction we're going. All of that said, then I will have a choreographer bring in, for Merrily, we roll along recently, there was a move where the line is, how did you get to be here? What was the moment? And I really felt like it was an important out communication. And the dance move, it was like, how did you get to be here? What was it? And I really was like, well, that puts them really to the side and there's no outward communication and they're not talking to each other or anybody out there. And I pushed for change, and every time I changed it, it looked worse. And every time I went back to it, I was like, it has power, it has this power. And the choreographer eventually, even passively, by letting me explore, allowed me to find what she had already found, that a little abstraction is really freeing in places sometimes, even where you're trying to communicate something specifically. So we go back and forth.
Good, very good. Now, you've also been an actor, and I'd like to see an image of a show in which you were an actor, if we could have that. Okay, I think people will recognize this. It's Fiddler on the Roof. You can tell from the taluses, that the men are wearing, among other things. Not from the cross up at the top, although there's a definite reason why that's there. And then there's that man upstage left in a chair. He looks very familiar. Can you talk about this?
So Fiddler's pretty recent history in terms of the company doing it at the Opera House. I don't think of myself as an actor, although I have acted. I've just gotten to the point now, though, with direction where I hope and think that I understand the process. So I feel like I am able to execute it, even though It's not something I do a lot. I teach it a lot. This idea of how to allow ourselves to speak instead of try and figure out how to say a line, how to trust that speech, as it is right now, when we talk, we're not pre-formulated, and if we were pre-formulated, it would probably be stiffer. We just, like this pause and this shift up into my head, I'm allowing myself to form something. I think listening and that kind of presence is what I try to shoot for, whether in song or spoken word.
Why did you decide to act in this production?
Well, the real answer to that is because I couldn't find anybody that I thought could really do it.
Okay, that's very honest.
I think that different people came with different things, and when I looked at the talent I had in front of me, I said, I can really have other people lead the show directorially in some of these ways, and this is a place that I might serve better.
Good. One more image of that, please.
It's actually the only, in the last, since Wild Goose started, it's the only show I've done.
That you've done as an actor. Well, I'm glad we looked at it. Good, good. One more, please. Okay, now there you are, just you solo as Tevye. I do have a question about this. Why does it look to me as though you're wearing a pair of like top boots over some real shoes?
Good question. So I think this was shot, I can't remember, I think it was shot at, the photo is from dress rehearsal.
Oh.
We were trying to make boots that were as close to the boots that we saw as we could. And not many modern boots are really analogous to sort of shtetl. A lot of those are actually wound, it turns out. Like there's a fabric that is sort of cross-laced around both sides and then tied at the top. I was excited about those. And the leather sort of fry we kept trying to order. So I ended up with a pair of fry boots that we had ordered for like a ridiculous amount of money. I think it was like $190. And they were supposed to fit, and they just didn't look right. And they were bought on Etsy, and we couldn't return them. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cut them and put them, we were going to make, I also have a quick change to get into the pajamas for the, so it was all about that, and it failed. I probably spent 10 hours working on it, and we never used it.
Okay. All right, we have just two more pictures to look at in conjunction with a question about something that Wild Goose has started doing, but I don't think has always done, and that is presenting new original scripts, not necessarily in fully designed productions. So can you talk about the overall endeavor and then talk about this one?
So it's actually, it certainly has been around since the inception of Wild Goose, the idea that we would pursue original work. We have done 3 in our 4 years, fully realized original productions.
Okay.
So we had 2 by a gentleman named Sean Hurley, who is an award-winning playwright. He lives in Grantham, New Hampshire. He was whatever you call a pundit, an announcer on NHPR, and a writer. He's a phenomenal writer. So he showed me this play, and it was called Food and Shelter. I personally think it's one of the greatest pieces of literature in the English language. I was unable to bring it to, and I've never said that about any, I mean, to me, it's with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, but equally, at least as difficult to comprehend. And a real challenge. And we did it, and it was lovely, and and the same thing, we then did a show called Claire in the Chair in the Cemetery, and then we did Year One with Eric Gernand. At the same time, we also were running the Incubator, which is a monthly reading program where we read plays by local playwrights, ranging actually the furthest we've gone is Chicago, which is not very local, but most of them have been right around here. People at Fact TV have come in and read scripts and screenplays. But we do a reading a month, basically, and then out of that, all 3 of the new plays that we've done have come out of that series.
So can we go back to that image of year 1? Okay, so one of the things that I think is important and interesting about this is not a great big stage with tons of light on it, tons of lighting instruments.
Yeah.
This is your studio, your storefront, yes?
Yep.
I did attend this play, and I think you could only seat 40 people, and we sat around the periphery. All those chairs you see are not part of the set, they are for the audience, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So how is that part of, I don't know, what makes the endeavor possible or makes it different from the other things?
Yeah, we are really excited. The other 2 shows were at Next Stage, and then we have to pay rent, and then we have, those were fully realized. They both lost money, but they were great. I mean, doing new plays is not a way to make money, but year 1 did make money because it was kept so lean. And I think that when we are able to do shows in our own space that are bare stage, like that, which had cubes and a couple of little pieces, but the kind of thing you could do American Buffalo, or you can do Red, or you can, things that we can do that are tight, small cast. I think it'll be a great place to flex.
Sounds great. We're close to the end of our time. Is there anything I've missed in your journey or Wild Goose's journey, your mission, or a category of projects we have not discussed?
I don't just say this, it's not a buzz line. We are very committed to community, and that is both, to be honest, it's probably primarily the community of the company. So what that means is, we have over 100 people now, and it just keeps kind of bubbling out. And more, I just today got an email from somebody who lives in Bellows Falls and is a makeup artist who hasn't been doing makeup for 5-10 years and wants to get back into doing makeup, saw one of our shows. Anyway, that kind of, and then the question is, how do you hold people? How do you care for people, especially when we don't pay them? And we love quality. We love people who do good work, and often people want to get paid for work they've really trained for and are good. How do you, in a community like this where we know if I paid all the actors for one show, we'd be broke. I mean, if, we have 30 people in Matilda. It would be ridiculous. So how to hold that community, make it feel like a place that they're cared for, even if that's not monetarily, and then let that percolate out into a vibe and a feeling and an energy in the larger community. That's my fixation.
Sounds fantastic. And I'm certainly a fan. I have seen, I think, 4 of your shows and plan to see every other one that's running when I'm in town.
You are so nice.
Oh, I think I'm just a theater junkie. But I want to thank you for being here, and I'm going to extract a promise from you, which is that you will come back.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And for Matilda, our next big piece is Matilda, which we're incredibly excited about. I think it's a great match for personnel that we have.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, David Stern. Okay, that's it for today, and we'll be back another time. Bye-bye.